So here's a question
Hmm.
that is unrelated to our topic, and then we need to talk about our topic.
Sure.
What if, like, okay, your father confessor.
Hmm.
What if you this will be like this is a sitting in the dorm room conversation. Like
Let me set up the pizza circle.
what if you confess, like what would you have to confess? And I don't mean like murdering someone.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, how does that go? Like what do you what
Well, you've had accountability partners before, I'm sure, right? At some
Yeah,
point in time.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yep.
So there's similarities there, um, in the sense that like AA, you've got
Hmm.
it's there's similar relationships in that where you have a sponsor.
Hmm.
Um, but the thing with the priest and a person he's hearing confession from is, the person has done some work, has kind of taken some time to do some examination. When I meet with another priest, um, it's embarrassing sometimes to admit the stuff you have to admit, and I'm father confessor to another priest who's in his late 70s.
Okay, hold on. I want to time out real quick. So
How does it? So the question is, how does it work, and especially in terms of priests going to other priests
yeah,
for confession,
yeah, yeah.
basically, it's like anybody coming to confession in the Orthodox Church in the sense that your job is to look at the things like we all is if we're Christians and we're honest with ourselves, we see the things that we've done that are sins.
Hmm.
We know what a sin is. We should know that's the key. And we go to confession, we're just simply fulfilling, the scriptural mandate: confess your sins one to
Yeah.
another. It's historically this was done in front of everybody in the church,
Hmm.
and you can imagine how at times maybe there might be things that happened that for the sake of the community, you might not want to reveal openly to the whole community, but that person still needs to deal with that sin.
Hmm.
So over time, as I understand it, the whole community thing became more of it focused on the priest as a member of the community, as a witness. So when I hear confessions, it's not like the Catholics, like where they have a booth and they have this. That's silly because you know who's in there. It's kind of silly. We stand right next to each other. We know
Hmm.
who's there. We have a conversation. I hear a confession. That conversation, while oftentimes, most of the time, is sort of directed at me, excuse me, is I'm more or less sitting in on the conversation between that person essentially and the Lord as a
Hmm.
witness. And then on top of that too, like any pastoral counseling, you're gonna call a person on their junk if you know they're just not dealing with stuff in confession, or most of the time, more often, you'll just offer a word, and usually I try to be encouraging to a person because people come and oftentimes they're very hard on themselves. And so you want to
Hmm.
say, look, okay, you're not as good of a sinner as you think you are, which is also good. It's good for your humility. But, as a priest too, it's like it's a little bit more, even more amplified. There's a slightly different way that we go about what we do because we have a greater responsibility. But all in all, it's still just being really honest about what we've done, things that have
Hmm.
happened that we shouldn't have done, obviously sinful things. Um, and I mean, you ask most people that have to go to confession, they're gonna talk about it and like, I kind of hate to go to confession, but I have to go, and they go and they're glad to go. But I can honestly say I'm really glad to go. I don't like to have to admit, I don't like to admit that I gossip, or that I spend too much time on YouTube. You know what I mean? Like, is that a
Sure.
sin? No. But laziness, that's that sort of thing. But it's humbling, but it's also, the thing about it is that when you do that, the difference would be, and this is the last thing I'll say because I know we got to move on. The difference in it is in saying this to somebody else. And I think this is one of the things I think evangelicals and Protestants, they need to capture this. It won't be sacramental in the sense that what we have is a sacrament,
Mm.
because it's not what you're after. It's not part of your tradition. It could be. But I think having that accountability to be able to say the thing you've done, like in AA, this is clear. Like,
Sure.
you admit it, you name it, and then that helps to take away some of the power the devil has on
Mm.
you to like hold you to it. So
Mm.
confession is probably one of the my favorite things about becoming Orthodox. Absolutely. Hearing it as a priest is probably my favorite thing to do, because it's like so right there in the trenches with a person.
Yeah.
And but on the other side, to be able to offer confession, to be able to walk away from it and say, okay, I've admitted those things, those sins, I've let go of those sins. God's forgiven me for those. I'm done with them. I move on. So yeah,
I love it.
there you go.